Welcome everyone. This is a Viper Professional Training and Support webinar. Today's date is Monday, November the 26th, 2018. This is a Monday night webinar. And the title of tonight's webinar is Taking Wedge Trades and Using Scale In and Scale Out. And as everyone knows that's been to our webinars or our live trading room, everything that we say and do at Viper Trading Systems is for educational purposes only. Futures trading, Forex trading, any kind of financial instruments trading involves risk. Therefore, there's always risk of loss. You should only trade discretionary capital, and that is money that you can afford to lose. Nothing said in this webinar. Other webinars we might have, our live trading room or anything else with Viper Trading Systems, should never be construed as trading or investment advice. And as always, everyone does trade at their own sole discretion. Any questions on the disclaimer? All right, if not, we'll go ahead and get started. By the way, since we've got some new people here and there, that come in and on trials and things like that, first off, what you want to do there you go. There's several people that are typing it up. Good deal. You know what I was asking then. All right. We like to make sure that we know which side of the trade we're looking for. And that's extremely important. I can't stress that enough because, you get on the wrong side of a trade with a 20 tick stop or a 15 tick stop, you're going to get whacked. And, don't go just shorting, these little minor trends and things like that. You got to be careful of that kind of thing. Because if the overall trend is up, then, that's what you're really looking for. Okay. So that's important. I just wanted to show that first off. You can clearly see this is just literally stair-stepping to the upside. See, this high is even higher than this one over here. It's higher than this one. This low's higher. This low, see what I mean? They're all higher lows, right here. This one barely took this one out. That's one of those that you'll look for that literally, if you draw a line on your chart, you'll literally be able to just jump in that thing and go crazy. Okay. So that's the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure what your chart's actually doing at the time. Now I want to go over a couple of things real quick. Basically, I wrote a couple of things down. What you want to do if you start Object Trader, okay? Now, if I put Object Trader on a chart, like right now, see, we've got this in Market Replay, but if I put Object Trader on this chart and I start Object Trader, I don't really want to take a trade until Object Trader knows that a bar has closed. Okay, and the reason for that is because right at this very moment with this bar stuck in limbo, it doesn't tell Object Trader anything. And if you've ever noticed on most Ninja strategies, you scroll down their little list here and you'll see that they're mostly calculate on bar close, as a rule. So the strategy is actually looking for bar close. Now we do have some things that'll do touches inside Object Trader, and I'm going to show those tonight, like the trend, that great trend line feature called the wedge. Okay. But always keep in mind, and another thing you don't want to do, because I've talked to people that do this, you don't want to do this. You don't want to go up here while you've got Object Trader on and change this to another instrument. Okay, because for some reason, and we'll probably address this in Ninja 8 to begin with, but for some reason, when it looks at an instrument, it's when it's first loaded on this chart with Object Trader. So if you change this to oil, to give an example, you may be trading oil and you might be trading Russell, even though it says oil. So be real careful with that, okay? Probably wouldn't do it with like trend lines or something, but if you just click market order, to give an example, you could actually just get in a trade with the wrong instrument. Okay, so don't change that instrument without first removing OT. To give an example, if I wanted to change this instrument to something else, I want to remove Object Trader and then change it. Okay, like if I wanted CL, to give an example. All right, I want to go ahead and do it that way. Okay, so just don't leave Object Trader on when you do any changing. We'll go back to Russell. All right, we know we're in an uptrend. Let's go ahead and put Object Trader on. Now, does everybody know about the template feature that's on Object Trader? How many of you use that? Just curious. Good, good. Some people are using it. Okay. The reason I was asking that is because, normally when you put Object Trader on your chart, when you double click it here, it's going to immediately go to the default settings, and usually when we put this template out, it's got 12, 20, 25, and 40, and it's got 3 contracts. I think I've got mine set on 4. Yeah. But it normally has 3 contracts on it. Okay. But if you want to change anything to like a scalp, to give an example, let's say that you wanted to scalp Russell. Okay. And maybe we just wanted to go for, 2 contracts at 10 ticks and 1 contract at, a runner. We could do that even just by simply setting a template. Okay. So the way you set a template, let's go over this just real quick. Let's say that I wanted to do 10 ticks and I wanted to do 10 ticks again. I'm going to do 3 contracts. So then let's say that I did a runner, like it may be 30 ticks, and we could even move our target after that. Well, if I automatically put in 3 contracts, this is going to automatically do 10, 10, and 30 if I simply set that either as my default or if I set it as a template, either way. Okay, so let's go ahead and set this to 3, and then we'll do quantity actually of 3, and then we could call this like a scalp, to give an example. Simply save it as, we'll just call it scalp. So we'll put in SCALP and call it scalp and hit enter. Now, if you took Object Trader off the chart and put it back on, it's not going to know to load that template. It's going to go back to the regular setting. See that it defaulted at. Whatever you set your default at, or if you didn't set your default, it'll remember exactly that. Okay. In other words, when we sent this out, we set it at 12, 20, 25, and 40, and with 3 contracts to be the max, and you can change that to anything you want. But if I do call up my template down here by simply saying load my template, scalp, all right, and then click OK, then you'll notice that it is at 10, 10, 30, and 3 contracts are already on here. Okay, so that way I don't have to go changing anything each time. I can just simply call up my scalp template if I want to. Okay, now if we want to go back to the regular setting, of course, all you have to do is just simply kill the strategy and then put it back on, and it's going to remember exactly what your normal settings were. Okay, I just wanted to go over that real quick because I had some people asking that were on Skype. Okay, so since we know that this is an uptrend, and we've already missed our trade, by the way. I don't like it when we miss our trade, but we've missed our trade, right? Well, we'll see if we can get it again. But there's ways to take this, for instance, like let's say that I wanted to just simply draw like a trend line, to give an example. Could I draw a trend line on this chart? And the answer is actually yes, isn't it? So we have a tool on Object Trader. I'm going to go ahead and put this on that template. We'll just put it on the template. Load the template, scalp, and click OK. All right. Now, if I want to set this on wedge, everybody knows that this has got a drop down on it, right? Now, for some reason, my monitors are really weird because if I click this, you're not going to see, it used to drop down below it. I'm going to have to talk to the program and see if there's something. But it goes to region, then bar close, PM1, PM2, predictor, ray, sniper, stealth, time trade, and wedge. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose wedge. Now, I do want to go ahead and let a bar close on this chart. Let's go ahead and let that happen just real quick. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we get a bar close. Okay, that's good enough right there, right? Okay, so now that we've had a bar close, I can go ahead and take my wedge tool, which is the ray tool, and just simply click on it. And let's just do this little trade here. Let's just see if it'll work. You could do a close, you could do a touch, you could do a touch plus. Okay, now when the prices are below the line, that's the T button. If the prices are above the line, that's the B button. So I can actually set this any way I want. For instance, if I wanted to go ahead and set this for like, I don't know, let's say that we thought it might come back down to here at least. Well, we could do another ray, like so, and see if we could get it off the bottom instead. Okay? Just by doing that, that's actually, let's say that I wanted to do touch plus 2. If that came within 2 ticks of that line or 2 ticks above that line, it would fire the trade. Everybody see how that works? Okay, so that's like, you know, how you do the wedge. Let's just try this just real quick. That's not my favorite because I would love my trend line to be like that. But let's see what we get here. And by the way, if you don't want to just get in one, you can even move this thing a little bit out of the way. You know, for instance, let's say you don't want to get it if it just tags this and then pulls back. You can even move this in real time if you want to also. Okay. Let's see, do you do anything to activate? No, Alex, on the wedge, you don't have to do like the ray trade, you know, which is in this list also. The wedge is actually just simply, you have a bottom wedge and you have a top wedge. Now, when it breaks this line, this will become my bottom wedge. Okay. Let's see if we get something here. We should get something. Okay, now notice the reason that didn't fire just yet is why? Anybody? Because it didn't go 2 ticks and then go the other direction. That's something we built into Object Trader also. Now for this to fire, this should have to go 2 ticks above this line. See there? See where it just went above the line? Now if I wanted to turn this on again and even add, now keep in mind I can only do 3 contracts because that's what we set it at. But if you had it like on auto, to give an example, you can go ahead and do that. Now, what if I wanted to just move these targets out of the way totally and use like a scale out feature? Okay. Now, we don't even have any profit on this just yet. Okay. But when we do get some profit on it, we can actually, if this is going to go our direction, we got our stop in, right? But let's see if we get some profit first, and then I'm going to show you how to scale out of this trade. Let's see if we get anything. Still dinking around a little bit. That was close. All right. Now notice that you actually have where they're starting to get a thrust and a little bit of a pullback, right? Now that's where I like to draw my trend lines. If we go ahead and get an actual little thrust and pullback so we can get our lightning on here. Okay. So let's see if we can get something like that. And we're going to go ahead and do another wedge. And by the way, you can always just delete your wedge and start over if you want. I'll just go ahead and put this out of the way for a minute because I'm drawing my wedge, but I don't know where to put it just yet because I don't have a thrust and a pullback. Okay, so let's see if we can scale out of this if we want to. We're going to scale out of like 1. If it touches, let's see, we'd be doing the bottom. And we'd want to do it. Here we go. We can set that one. Now, what if we wanted to do something like this and scale out if this happens to go 2 ticks underneath that line? Okay, I could even scale out of 2 if I want to. I can change anything I want, you know, as long as it's actually not already triggered the trade. Okay, see how my trend lines supposedly is holding. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Okay, but not necessarily that I use this way, because most of the time I like this line 6, and that's not a trend line. That's more of a, you know, basically a line that as it thrusts and retraces, it keeps drawing. Okay, but watch this. If this is going to actually go ahead and take 2 of those off, it will pretty quick. Now, if it doesn't, it won't take them. Remember, it has to do 2 and then go the same direction another tick. So that's only 2 ticks so far. So it didn't really go that other direction, did it? Okay, so we're still in our 3. Let's see, yellow bars on RTY get you, Mindy. What I would do in the case of yellow bars would be, get to where you really draw your trend lines and try to scalp a little bit more. Because sometimes you'll be surprised. Now I'm going to move my trend line now because see, it's actually doing pretty good. We'll go ahead and do our trend line now underneath that swing instead. See how I can use that as a scale? And it actually held on that one because it was actually testing my trend line. Now, did we luck out on that, or was that actually testing a trend line? It was testing a trend line. And by the way, anytime you get the profit that you want or something, you don't have to let this thing retrace if you don't want to. But if you draw these trend lines and use this scale out feature to give an example, let's say, for instance, I want to just go ahead and scale out of this with, 2 contracts if it just happens to even touch that line. I can do that even. Okay, see my little scale out button right here? Now that should actually touch +0. We should be, yeah, we did scale. We scaled out. See there how that works? Okay, but did you know I can also scale back in if I want to too? Let's say that goes 2 ticks above. Well, we're flat right now. Let's see if we can get something. Now that's my bottom. Let's go ahead and make it our top instead. Let's see, when it goes deep into a predictor. Mindy, on your question, let's go over a little bit of that because one thing about this makes it pretty easy, in my personal opinion, to do quite well with trend lines and also like stealth and things like that. But let's go over a few of these. I'll stop this whole thing for just a minute. Let's look at some trades over here. All right, first off, you want to make sure that you know what your trend is. Okay, see your thrust, your retrace, and your thrust. You got a identified swing right here, so I draw a line. Okay, now in the room all the time I'm talking about, if they don't take this line out, you're not heading down. Is that correct? See, this would be how it would be happening in real time. Okay, so anytime they get anywhere near this, you want to be taking these trades. And of course, you also look at like your little predictor to give an example. See, this is actually a phantom type trade right here that's setting up. And notice that they're not taking out that low. Now they came close, but when was your entry on this particular one if you're more of a conservative trader? Could you draw that trend line I talked about? See, this could be in real time too. Remember, you wait for your thrust, your retrace, and you just draw it. And see how this is doing right here? And when did it break it? It broke it right in through here. Now you could redraw it from here to here, and you would have gotten in a little bit quicker. Let me show you how I would do that. Let's say that you were looking at this and it hits phantom, and you're thinking, wow, this could be a pretty good trade. Well, look at your thrust, retrace, thrust, retrace. So could you actually redo your trend line in real time, by taking it more like, well, we're going to have to go past it, but more like this, right? Because you're actually drawing along those tops, and you would get in down here. See there how that would work? And of course, if this didn't go ahead and take out this low here, this was obviously in an uptrend, right? You had a low, you had a high, you had a higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, and then you had a higher low here even. So you just simply, put your trend line in. Now we just did that just a minute ago with this little trade here even, okay? Now what would you do if you saw what's happening right here on this chart right now? Anybody? What do you think you should actually do on this particular one? You got to wait for a retrace. What if it doesn't retrace? What if it doesn't give you what we call a minimum criteria trade? Could you use a trend line to get into a trade like this even? Well, let's just see if that might work. We'll find out. Maybe it won't, maybe it will. But let's draw a trend line along our lows. See how it's right through there? Looks pretty good, right? And you've got a trend line that if it happens to break and starts heading back up, it could actually be that this could be a very decent trend line, right? So you could actually set it. Let's see if this actually works. Now keep in mind, this could be chasing a trade too, but I'm actually using a trend line instead. And if I wanted to use this one instead, I'd just simply go from here to here instead. See how that little thrust and retrace? And then if it happens to pop above that line and stay above that line, then I could go ahead and take that trade. These wedge type trades can be pretty good. Now this should be my bottom one right here, so I'll go ahead and do it like that. Let's see if we get anything here. That's a little trend line. I'm hoping it actually breaks below it and then pops back through it. That's what I want. It's doing it, okay? Could draw another trend line right across here. Maybe too late on that one. See, a trend line can be flat too. There we go. We got our trade. Okay. We're in 2, and they're both at 10 ticks because we didn't change our scalping little method on scalping. Is what we didn't do. Okay. So we're in a trade right there, and we did it based on a trend line. Now, if I wanted to do another one based on that trend line, I could simply do it like add one. Now, keep in mind, since I've only got 3 set, I should only add 1, but I may be actually, see, we set it at 3 on our max. See there how that touched that trend line again? And you put your stop just under the swing. Right here where my cursor's at. Looks like it's going to be okay. See, trend lines can make, to me, they make a big difference in being able to see things, because as long as you get a point, for instance, a thrust retrace, if you get that thrust retrace where you can actually draw that trend line. Now keep in mind, I don't know if anybody remembers this years ago, but we used to draw this like this. Remember, we would actually draw a trend line as we're seeing things. And then I would tell people in the room to also draw it tighter if you saw it happen to go from one swing to another. Matter of fact, we used to call this, like, I think it was like called the Potter trade. Anybody remember that look that we used to do? Like that? Several of you do. Good, good. But see how that can work for you on even a trend line? Now, keep in mind that we also do the little boxes and things. Of course, you could box this in. We're not going to use the wedge over here, or the region. You could box it in like this when it goes above line 2. You know, take some coin. There's just all kinds of ways. So look at this trade, by the way, even on a trend line. Now, what if you wanted to protect your trade? This looks like a pretty good trade. Let's see if we can set a trend line to scale out of this thing. Let's see if we get a trend line to scale out. All right, I don't like that trend line at all. That's too flat. Everybody see that? Now, if this does make me what we call a little thrust and pullback, we'll set our trend line accordingly. Looks like it's doing it. See if we can set something. Looks like it's trying to go back up. Let's see. This point to this point, that's still about that same flat line. I don't like that as much, but let's scale out if it happens to break that. Just in case, we'll scale out of 1 if it breaks that trend line. See that little inflection point there? And you could pretty much say it goes along here too. See it? Now notice that you could readjust your trend line like so. Isn't that pretty much where it's at now? So could I protect one of these contracts if it happens to touch that line? Now keep in mind, my bottom line is, remember, prices are above the line. or prices are below the line, right? So I'm using the bottom B button. And if this happens to come back and touch that my wedge by one tick, will take one contract off. That's the way you can scale in and scale out of these things. Okay. Now keep in mind that turned out to be a pretty decent trade to begin with. So the question is, do trend lines work? And I would say they do. Look at this trend line right here. What if you were sitting here watching this and you saw this happen in real time and you're saying, okay, Gary always says and Charles always says, look for a mid-band trade. But do you see that you've actually got a little bit of a lightning going on? So could you draw your trend line and see how it took it right there? See, that's another way to do instead of boxes, by the way. You know, and you'll get in a little bit earlier sometimes too, because if you would have boxed this never did close below stealth. You notice that? So that didn't qualify for minimum criteria. Now it did tag stealth, but what a beautiful trend line. And if you would have boxed it anyway, you would have been boxing it more across here. See what I mean? So you might not have been in till, let's say we're seeing it like this right here. So you're boxing it. Well, you're faked in right there, right? You got to put your stop under there. And then that one worked, right? Even on the box. But the trend line got you in a little bit quicker. Now let's see if we lose one of our contracts. Touch plus one, so it'll have to do touch plus two, basically. It has to do one and then one more. And that's that trend line right there. Yeah, we used to call that second bite of the apple. As a matter of fact, Walter, you're right. I liked them because they basically made an upside down Y or a Y. And it gave some pretty good trades. Remember, that's when we introduced Money Shade a few years ago. And then Object Trader was basically born from, well, remember we used to have one called the Trendline Trader even. Now that should have actually done my little trade here. Let's see. This is my bottom wedge. We'll go ahead and do it this way instead. Let's see. See if that's going to take that out at all. I may have been not paying attention to my wedge. One thing about it, don't go drawing a bunch of wedges on your chart, because Object Trader is only going to remember the one that it's price above and price below. Okay. And if that can get a little bit confusing if you're not careful too, simply because, basically like right now, we've got a line below the prices. So it's that button right there. And if we had it more like this, like that would be the top button. We see that, right? Let's see if we can get a wedge trade. We'll either get out of, well, we did get out of one. It touched the line, so we're not going to get out of another one. We'll let our runner run. This will add one, by the way. What if I wanted to add two? If it touches that plus one tick, should it add one? That's a trend line. See my little thrust retrace, drew my trend line. And like I say, this is more of a way to actually get in trades that don't happen to be, hitting like minimum criteria or something like that. See how that did that with that little wedge? Now, of course, I'd put my stop just under there. Scale out. Well, now scale out would only work though. Who was asking that? Mike? Mike, on your question, scale out is still clicked on here, but it won't scale out unless I set one of these. See, like right now we have 3 in, but let's say I want to scale out of this thing. Let's get rid of the wedge. Now I wouldn't do this, but let's just go ahead and scale out if it takes that trend line. We'll scale out of 2 of them, as a matter of fact. All right, and we can move our targets, right? In other words, we just keep going the direction of the trend line. Let's see if that works. And then let's see when it actually takes us out. And by the way, you can use this also, if you want to scale out of all of it. You know, like if I want to scale out of all 3 of the contracts, just make sure you match this with however many you want to scale out. I could scale out of 1. If it touches that line, I could scale out of anywhere up to the max. Okay. So by using that trend line, I can actually even scale out of this trade if it happens to take that trend line out. Let's see how far that goes before it takes it out. Looks like it's going to go to maybe that predictor. Now, where would my trend line be now? Anybody? Couldn't I redraw my trend line? See my thrust? You know, my retrace, my thrust? Where's that swing? Could I do this? More like that and scale out. Now, that'd be a pretty tight stop, but wouldn't that protect a lot of that coin? If that happened to do that, that's my bottom one. So if that touches that +1, we should be out of all of our contracts. Let's see if it does. And you don't have to make it quite that tight if you don't want, because if this has got more upward momentum, maybe we don't want out of these, right? There we're flat. See how easy and beautiful that will work if you want to use it that way. Now notice with 3 contracts, that gave up 8 ticks. And at 3 contracts, that was a good, you know, $100 and some odd bill, right? And plus you had some slippage and things like that. So, you know, keep in mind that, you know, when you've got multiple contracts, this scale out feature is pretty nice to have. You know, what if we didn't want to scale out of this thing? We just wanted to take all but 1 off. We could have done that, but instead I went ahead and flattened it. You can also use this feature to even reverse a trade, but I'd be careful with that one. Going against the trend can be kind of deadly for you. You got to be careful with that. You want to see if we can get in one more time? Let's see. We got a lower high. I don't like that wedge though. Let's just see if we can get a better wedge. So far it's a high, a low, a lower high. This is where you draw your wedge. I don't like that. I like it more when it goes more like that. But anyway, let's draw it and just move it live as this actually sets up for us, okay? Let's just see what it does. And we'll adjust it accordingly when we see it actually do our wedge. Okay, we're going to be going long, so we're going to turn both those on. And we're going to wait, though. We're not going to take a breakout. I'd like for it to come down here. Obviously, that'd be real nice. Okay, but we're going to get in based on a wedge and see if we can get a trade. So far, the wedge is still intact the way it is. I don't like it. Not going to turn it on yet. There we go. Maybe high, low, lower, high. See if we get a lower low. Nope, they're just going to take it up. That's okay. We didn't take the wedge break, so we're fine. Okay. Now, what if you had a bunch of, well, not a bunch of contracts, but let's say you had some contracts in here and you wanted to totally protect your trade. Could you see how you could see these little areas like this? You know, you can use the first set. You could use the second set, which is up here. See, like so. Now, that's pretty much taking you out of that trend line, isn't it? But you're not going to short it. That's only to take you out of the trade. Okay? Anybody have any questions on using the scale in and scale out as far as that goes? Now, keep in mind you've also got some auto features on Object Trader that you can use. Now, I probably personally, with this breaking micro, I'm kind of figuring it's going to at least go down to here. I'm also kind of figuring it may go down to here. And it hasn't even checked. I'm going to draw lines on my chart ahead of time. There's a phantom trade. Now, if it comes all the way down here, that's testing a major second level support. So I would venture to say that this would probably fire somewhere in here, simply because we don't want a lower low. Okay, let's see if we can get something like that. When you've had this much of a run, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, big 7, yeah, you can pretty much count on you getting some kind of retracement. But could you use your little wedge trader, though, to get you a decent little trade? And the answer is actually yes. Let's see if we can get something. There was one just a second ago. We just missed it. Everybody see it? Right across here. See, that was a decent little trade. You know, you could do these literally all day long with a couple of contracts or so and just stack $100 bills on your account. Okay? By simply using like a trend line like that. You know, let's wait and see if we can get another trend line to draw. We'll see if we can get even, I don't know, let's just see if we can get even like, let's go for like 6, 7, and let's just go for 8. Let's just see what we can get on that. If we get a trend line. Okay, there's no pulling back just yet, so we don't have a trend line yet, right? Everybody see that? So you can't really draw that one just yet. Now, if this bar goes back down, you could draw it, but that looks like it's just bouncing off support. So that's not a trend line trade, in my opinion. Now, it was a trade as far as that goes if you drew a line, but we're not in that one. See if we can get a trend line. There's a little trend line drawing, isn't there? Let's see here. Now, that's a little bit too flat for me. I'll show you what I'm talking about. That's too flat, and that's no kind of momentum back to the upside. But let's see if we can get a trend line. See if we can get a trend line. Maybe, if that bar would close down. There's me a little trend line. Just see if we can get 6, 7, and 8. Now, since it's getting a little lower highs, I'd expect this to take out the support just a little bit. Right here, it may not. We may get a higher low. That is definitely a little trend line, right? See if we can scalp it. Put our stop just right underneath the swing. Exit on close. Let's see if we can get that. So it's 6, 7, and 8. We're just going to scalp it. Don't you love it? That's what they usually do. Is they'll pop you a little bar and then they try to go against you. But you got to give it a little bit of wiggle room because we got a swing right there. There you go. Now I'd probably put my stop right there right now. See your little swing that's trying to make? Little low, high, higher low, higher high. Let's see if we get our rest of our trade without being taken out. That was close. See how exit on close saved you? Did not take you out of the trade. Another trade that worked. Okay? See how that works, everyone? Now, also keep in mind that there are lots and lots of traders out there that will literally just scalp these markets when they see trend lines and things. You know, you can get some pretty decent trades if you just watch for some trend lines. You can watch for phantom trades and do a trend line, to give an example. Let's see if our little scalping policy will work again. We'll see if we can get another trend line trade. We're just going to scalp this. That's what, 13, 21 ticks? That's only a $100 bill per trade. Okay, you got support right under here. Don't have a trend line right now. Now, technically, in a way you do, because see, you have your bars going straight down, and if this bar comes up, then you do have a higher low. Could you actually draw a trend line there? See if you get a little trade, a little wedge. That one, I'm not sure of that one. Let's see. I don't do the wedge that much. That one didn't even fire, so not sure exactly why. But I wouldn't chase it now, because that should have actually, on my wedge, gone ahead and fired, unless I drew it right in the middle of that bar, and I might have done that too. But let's see if we can get another one. We'll just play it forward. See if there's anything at all. Pretty much topping out, isn't it? There's a wedge, or a wedge. See that little thrust, retrace, swing? Below it, so it should be the top one. See if we get anything. Close to getting something. Very close. Now keep in mind, if you get a wick like that, you really want to readjust your trend line. Because if you don't, you're going to get barely tagged into a trade. Like I'm probably going to get right there. See it? See, I just barely got tagged into that trade. And I'll bet you it goes back down a little bit. See, that's what they like to do if you don't redraw your trend line. Because remember, we had it here and here, and then all of a sudden you had it here and here. So you would have readjusted your trend line more like this. Where's my dot? There we go. I'll draw it. More like that angle. Like so. Now you would still got in it, so I guess that's all right. Now, if this closes below here, I'd be closing that trade out. See how that did? I don't like that trade. Now I can redraw my trend line, can't I? Something like that. Let's see if it goes down any lower at all. Nice tight trend line. Didn't get a sin. We may have lost the effectiveness of our wedge with this. No, we didn't either. Okay, good. Market replay, that can happen. I put my stop just right there just in case. Now, this is if you want to play with trend lines like this. Keep in mind, though, that by scalping like this, I am getting some coin on here, aren't I? You know, not much. But that's those little trend line breaks that they're constantly doing. Now, could this trade turn into actually being a decent trade? We're going to find out here in a second. We need a higher low if we're going to. Feeling a little heat on it. Let's see. We've got our stop in. And by the way, if it goes down to line 1, I'll take it again. Remember, Russell likes to tag line 2, give you 10 or 12 ticks or so, and then they'll usually break and they'll check that line 1. Let's see. You mean there are other wild traders that only scalp, Gary? Oh, scalping can be extremely profitable, especially, you know, if a person actually does like a few extra contracts to give an example. I'm going to leave this for a second. That bar's got to close up. There we go. Tighten my stop, so I'm only going to lose 4 ticks. See how I did that with my lightning? There you go. Just got your scalp. Everybody see how that can work with trend lines? Now, what is this trade going to do now? Well, we don't know. It's starting to go pretty sideways, isn't it? So, is it going to break down? Is it going to do a phantom? Could we do a trend line on it? We'll find out. Let's see if we can do another trend line. Oh, I know what you mean, Bob. Said he knew a guy that made like $5,000 a day scalping. Well, the thing is, while other people are looking now, if you get into a scalp mode, I would guarantee you that your win ratio is going to go down some. But the whole idea is that you're going to be, putting really tight stops. See, like I did that one a minute ago. Remember, it got us in on the trend line. We got out immediately. Because who knows, this could break down for all we know, right? But what I'm trying to show here is that these trend lines can work. Let's see if we can get another scalp. Now remember, we need a lightning type look to it, or we're not going to take a trade, right? Oh, look at that line 1 trade setting up. Now that one, I'd probably just go ahead and do this with a close of a bar. And usually if I see something like this, I'm liable to even do this because I trust this trade quite a bit because it's actually, a line 1 phantom trade, first time in after a trend change. That's probably a fairly risky trade. I'm not saying to take this trade, everyone, but if you do take this trade, a lot of times I'll just fire it at line 1 myself. If it even closes above that line 1, this one hasn't so far. But if they close above line 1, a lot of times you can get a decent trade on that. Let's see if it closes above line 1. I'm going to set that at 0. If it just touches above the deal, I'm going to take it instead of 1 plus 1. That'll be plus 1 is what 0 means. There we go. Let's see if we can get another $100. Looking to the left to trade the right, I'd probably at least want to go to right there. So I'd probably move a target or so just because I see looking to the left to trade the right that we should get up there. But you don't have to, you can just leave it at those targets we said. We had 6, 7, and 8, wasn't it? Well, that's 9. Let's leave it at 9. Let's see if it gets it. And of course, this is what I do also. I'm not going to give them very much wiggle room. If this trade decides to go south, I don't want it. Everybody see how you could possibly use this type of thing, on your chart? Keep in mind, we're just simply scalping right now. And this is not my idea of much scalping because these are only $100 trades. There you go, just got it. Okay. Now, could you do the exact same thing with a trend line? For instance, what about to the downside? Could you do that? Well, you probably already would have done that up here. See this one trade right here? This one pretty much went across like that, and then it did this little like that, and then rolled over. Everybody know how to use the scale out feature and everything when you're trading? And like I said, keep in mind too, if you want to just, scalp, I don't like to personally scalp 3 contracts with like Russell, simply because, you're not going to really go for 6, 7, or 8 ticks. You want to get at least 10. I don't even like to trade if I can't get 10 ticks. And I like oil a lot better on that, because 3 contracts on oil is $300 with 10 ticks. And that's much, much, much better. Okay. Now, if you were actually more of a conservative trader, could you actually draw something like this? If they happen to break that, keep in mind that if they just barely tag that line and roll over, that you're not really breaking that trend line, right? Okay. Let's see if we get another. We got to have a little lightning so we can draw the trade. Let's see if we can get one. There's a little lightning right there. Now that's too flat for me. You'd be drawing it right across here. I don't like that. See if we can get a better one than that. Like I say, I don't like a flat trend line, because a flat trend line can make a difference in whether you'll make money or not. That's not a flat one, obviously. That's at about a 40, that might be a 45-degree angle, I guess, mightn't it? We can try it. You want to try it? Now, if this bar goes down, I'm going to retighten this thing more like this. See what I'm doing? Just tightening it up. Yeah, and really, I'm just going with the angle of those 2 bars right there instead. It's not really a swing, but I'm hoping to get another trade off of support. See what we're trying to do? Let's see if it works. Got it set at touch plus 0. Got our trade. I'm going to tighten this one up at support, just in case. Everybody know the reason I'm doing that? Because it bounced off support, so I expect support to hold. If it doesn't hold, then I may get another trade down in here again. See if we can get those 6, 7, and 8 ticks. Maybe not on that one. Maybe. Maybe, maybe not. Now, whoop, we just missed that one. I got it going too fast. Everybody see another trend line, basically, or a line 1 trade that I drew just a minute ago? Now, could that have been a decent little trade? Yes, absolutely, it could. You want to see if we get anything on the other side of it? Let's see, RTY. We traded this at 8:30. Let me fast forward this, and let's see if we can do some trend lines based on exactly what this thing did this morning. How about that? You want to see if we can get that? All right. What we're going to do is we're going to go to 8:30. I'll just do it 500 times. $6.54. There's some trades, you can see them though, trend lines. Got a little bit of a trend change, didn't we? You know, see if we can get a short trade since the background went the way it did instead of 8. There's your little trend line, isn't it, right there? Anybody see it? Thrust, retrace, thrust. Could we draw a trend line? See if we can get something on that trend line. Redraw it a little bit. You can see the low right there. That's one of those that's more like this now, isn't it? I just missed that. That's all right. Everybody see that? Where my trend line just got broken? That's where you should have fired the trade. Now, since we didn't get it there, we're going to have to get it at a different spot. Let's see if we can get it. I'll go ahead and take this trend line if it happens to break it. That's pretty much along our trend line anyway. Notice how I tried to get a little bit better, but I had this going a little bit faster. But let's see if we can get that one. That's still a trend line, right? If you only have one trend line active, it's always the T. No. Mike, on your question, the way this works is if the prices are above the line, it's this button, even if it's just one line. Okay, watch it. It should fire this, as a matter of fact, if this breaks. Let's just make it break. 1 tick plus 1. Trend line break. Maybe. You could readjust your trend line right now, absolutely. Could this be a trend change? We don't know yet, but what's happening right now? Phantom trade. Phantom trade. You gonna give me a trade wedge or not? Yep. Got our trade. Everybody see that? How cool that can work for you on trend lines? And it looks like we got our little scalp, didn't we? Bingo. Everybody see that? Now let me show you something else though. Now this is in a little bit of hindsight, but if you can clearly see this on this chart, see where you've got this high, this low, right, this high, low, lower high, lower low. Could you draw a trend line along in here? Like so. Does anybody remember what happened at the open of the market? Anybody at all remember it? You know, just kind of pick your highs and lows with your trend lines. Let's see if we get another, where we can get another inflection point. Because what we're doing right now, see, we're going with the high and we're going with this high. We could go with this high and this high. Whoops, sorry. We'd go with this high and this high. See, it's pretty much the same angle anyway. Close. Let's see. Let's go for 8. We like to trade 831. So let's see what happened at 831. Does anybody remember what happened at 830? You know, this thing just kind of, you know, it did break down pretty good, but you notice how sideways and, you know, that they get right at about this time. Don't go getting whipped around in this stuff because, you know, this can literally eat an account, you know, pretty easily. Everybody knows that, right? But what if it breaks that trend line? See how you've definitely got good trend line that you could draw? What if you said, you know what, if this thing happens to break and I wanted to go, you know, this is around 830, so we're going for more gusto type trades, right? What if we went 14, 20, and like even a runner for 50 ticks? Could you actually draw your trend line ahead of time? Or what about boxing it in like we teach? Even that, right? Now, what I'd recommend doing, if everybody would do this, unless you're really good at scalping at the market open, I would stay away from about the first 5 minutes of trading. Because some of our best traders do just that, and you don't get all whipped around. You know, because these things can be brutal. Could we take a trend line? If this happens to break, though, could we take it, you know, for instance, for some quick coin if it broke that trend line to the downside. See how it's got a little trend line I could draw? What if I wanted to do something like that? If it broke up, I'll take the long. If it broke down, I'll take the short. This is a wedge. This is telling me that I've got, some nice highs and some nice higher lows. So lower highs, higher lows. So I'm drawing a little wedge. Now, if you don't want to just get sucked into it accidentally, you can also move your trend line, even in real time, a little bit out of the way so you don't accidentally get slapped into a trade with just a touch. Okay, so let's see which one of these will fire. It looks like it's going to be the short side. Now, usually if something like this happens, like this right here, I'll go ahead and just, especially with this background like this right here, because here was your trade. This was the phantom trade. This is an opening trade. It's about 4 minutes into the trade, into the morning. This is a trend line. So if it breaks, we're just going to stay green. We're going to watch this and stay green. See where this says flat? It's white. If it goes green on me, I'm going to keep it green. May give it, couple or 3 ticks or something, but I'm not going to give it much. Or just using the line tool with wedge turned on. Basically, David, on your question, our wedge is actually designed to work with the ray tool with Ninja, is the way we designed it. Now, we've got another tool in Object Trader called the Ray Trade. I'll go over that one in another webinar because you can even draw channels with that one. Now, I personally like the wedge better because you can actually use it like a region. See, I'm actually using this like long above, short below. Could I readjust my long above? Well, you want to be careful with that because, we're actually a good angle. We're at a good angle here. Which way are we going to get this trade? We don't know yet. To me, it looks like to the downside, and it just did it. Okay, now watch and see if you can't actually draw a trend line, though, as this thing heads down and then, gives you what we teach all the time. Okay, to where you get a nice retrace. Because if you remember in the room this morning, we called a rollover trade that actually worked pretty nicely, but then they just blew that thing to the upside, and it was big time too. See how we're still staying green? We're not going to let it go against us very much at all. I usually like to watch this. If this goes too red on me, I don't like it. See there? You just got some decent trades. Now, does anybody see a trend line that you could actually draw on this chart as we speak right now? See, you've got a little thrust, retrace, thrust. Could you draw a trend line through here? Like so. Like that. Could you draw that trend line? And then back it off a little bit. I usually like to back them off about 1/4 of an inch. It opens. Now, at other times when you're going to scalp, you want it tight. But if you don't want to get faked into something, you also want to protect yourself. Remember this morning, we said if it took out that swing right there, we weren't going to stick with this trade. What if instead you actually did something like this? This is rolling over. Look how it kissed my trend line, by the way. It's almost like they can tell what we're doing, isn't it? But did you know you can actually reverse a trade also? For instance, you're short on this with 1, everything's cool, but you got a trend line drawn. And if this thing happens to not take out this low, could you actually get long on that trade? See how it just reversed? Now, I'm not advocating reversing trades as much. Okay. I would probably, instead of doing that, go ahead and draw like a trend line again. To give an example, if you got in 1, well, this is moving too quick now. Anybody see how that trend line could actually get you into a decent trade? We called that trade this morning in the room. We said box it in at mid-band. Anybody remember that? Why did we say box it in at mid-band? Well, for one thing, because it was taking out resistance to the left. You can clearly see it if you draw it on your chart, like so. See how resistance was right here and they took it out? That's pretty much telling you that when they break those like this right here, they're trying to go up. Then if they make a higher low, they are going up. Okay? But some of our people actually took this trade right here. Now, could you use a trend line? And I'm going to wrap this pretty quick. But let's say you're in 3 contracts like this right here. What if you wanted to use a trend line to scale out of 2 of them? Could you do it? And the answer is, I think I put that accidentally in an upper panel. I need to bring this down. There we go. All right, look at our little trend line, and then I'm going to wrap. Get this one back up here. There we go. All right, see your thrust, retrace, thrust. Could you draw a trend line here? And it looks like you might draw it here now and scale out of this thing. Don't reverse it. Just take off a couple of contracts. Well, we already hit our, I didn't change that quick enough. It was still on 3. So it flattened us. But you could have scaled out instead. See how that broke my trend line? It's not a bad way to trade, I can tell you that. Did this trade go up some more? It looks like it probably still will because it even held line 6. But could you protect yourself with trend lines? And the answer is yes. And could you get in the trade again anyway if you happen to get another trend line? And the answer is yes, right? So wait for it to thrust, pull back, draw your trend line, and then get in the trade. Let's see if we can do one more, and then I will wrap. Okay, if it breaks here, you're breaking micro. Okay, they broke micro. You got a trend line, don't you, so far? Right there. Could we take that trade based on that trend line? Okay, I'm below the price, so that's my T button. There we go, you just got it. And where would you put your stop? Let's see, you have a high, low, higher, high, higher, low. Not higher, high, this is though. So I'd probably put my stop just under this swing right here. Like so. And if I remember right, that's where we called that stop to be on that trade too. Okay? That was also a minimum retracement trade, absolutely. And that's another thing, keep in mind that this is just another way to trade that we've designed into Object Trader. But you could also box this thing. You could do the power meter. See how power meter just went green? But look how nicely that trend line got me in a little bit better than even a box. Okay? So it's definitely not a bad way to trade, right? Now, if you were in any more contracts than this right now, could you protect your trade? And the answer is yes, with a trend line. Okay? So keep in mind those trend lines. And also keep in mind, too, if you're going to scalp, make them tight. If you're going to go more for, basically like even a trend change or something, then give it a little bit of wiggle room so that it doesn't just barely tag you in. Because the one thing about it, the traders out there that have those algorithms, they know where your trend lines are. The beauty of Object Trader is, though, you can tell it you want it to touch +4 if you want to. You can tell it to close +4 if you want to. We've built all that into Object Trader. Okay, so, they're not just looking at a trend line as much when you're doing it this way. Okay? I hope everybody enjoyed it tonight. Did everybody get something out of it? How would you trade the power meter, Sal, on your question? Well, basically, see, it already changed the power meter to green, so we can't trade it right now. But if you were trading the power meter, let's see if we can get a red power meter. And I'll just do a power meter trade long if we get a red. It has to go to red first. There it's at red. There it's at green. That's a power meter trade. That's more of a breakout trade though. And I'd have to put my stop just underneath that swing right there. See there? That's a power meter trade. Is it going to work out? Well, it's hard to say. It might. Looking like it is. Okay. What is downside of power meter? Earlier there were several reds. Well, Cross, on your question, the beauty of the power meter is you're not really shorting or anything against the trend. Your power meter is just telling you when they do a little retrace. And that's when you can get back in it. That's pretty much, let's go over this just real quick, then I'll wrap. This right here, if you think about power meter, let's just close this. We don't care. All right. Let's say that you saw this this big thrust and you said, I'm not going to get back in it until it actually does some retrace. Well, power meter would turn red the moment it took out this swing. It would also turn red if it took out this swing. See here, looking left and then right. All right. So when did this actually change back to the upside? It'd be right across here right now. This is where your power meter would change back to green. If it goes down a little bit further, that's in. That's power meter. Okay? See how power meter would actually get you in that trade, and then you get that nice move. That would change from red to green. Okay? All right. Again, thanks everyone for coming tonight. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll trade again tomorrow morning. Now remember, with the way we got these monster moves today, we're just liable to get a little bit of chop tomorrow. Okay? So be very, very careful. All right. Thanks again. We'll see you in the morning. Good night, everyone. Did I miss anybody's question? And if I did, just be sure and hit me up in the morning with it. Okay. Thanks, everyone, again.